I'm Audrey Bilger. I'm president of Reed College, and we're about just down the street from the college at our house here. So I'm so happy to be here and to be able to visit with you. And let me introduce my wife, Cheryl Pawelski.
Okay, I don't have to say my last name again because it's covered. Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl. I am a record producer, and I run a record company with my three other partners called Omnivore Recordings, and we've been labeled for 12 years now.
This time last year, you two had something that happened that was a pretty big deal. Having to do with your job, Cheryl. Do you remember what it was?
Essentially, we were hosting the Grammys in our living room.
Well, we've attended the Grammys many times because I've been active within the Recording Academy, but I've been nominated 5 times and won 2 Grammys, and last year was the second one. And so far, and hopefully, it was the only virtual Grammys ever. So I guess I got to say I won a Grammy in my living room.
Who gets to say that?
And you won the Grammy for?
Oh, right. It was for the Best Historical Album, and it was a brand new best of Mr. Rogers. So,
which was lovely.
Thank you.
And like many presidents, you have a grand bookshelf behind you. Unlike some presidents, it's not necessarily full of books; it's full of vinyl records, right?
To be clear, there are bookshelves in this house. This all around a great deal of books and records, and in fact, some of our jokes are, what else is there really but music and reading and studying and thinking. So that's what we do.
Well, I appreciate you talking about how you have community in your home, and oftentimes Reed becomes an extension of your community. Part of making connections with campus. And I know you and Cheryl are also involved with students on campus, that you have some things that you do regularly, some ways that you connect. For example, around finals, we have a late night breakfast. So folks from the Reed community will come out and serve our students breakfast. They come in and grab their scrambled eggs and pancakes. And I've heard you two have participated in that.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
It's definitely one of our favorite things. So we're behind the counter scooping out. Cheryl generally likes to be on
what?
Bacon.
Oh, well, bacon is very popular.
And I just have
well, duh.
I'm a vegetarian, so I do not do bacon. However, I can tell you that there are many students for whom this is a huge treat, and they'll ask the question, "How many pieces can I have?" We'll generally say,
"As many as you want."
That's the best. We're talking about this field of higher education, which connects us all. One of the really cool things is that both of you really recently received a distinguished alumna award from your respective institutions. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Well, so I received an award last fall, and Cheryl is about to receive one this summer. My award was from Oklahoma State, and Cheryl's is from Marquette in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so I'll just say that it was really cool for us to go back to the campus where I was an undergraduate. And I was myself, I grew up outside of Tulsa in Oklahoma. I will often say I didn't know that places like Reed existed. And I was in public higher ed, both for my undergraduate and also for my PhD. And so it was such a cool thing to go back and reconnect. I majored in philosophy at Oklahoma State. And Cheryl, maybe you could say a little bit about what you majored in.
Yeah, I kind of made it up a little bit as I went along because I was always driven towards music, and there really wasn't a pathway to becoming a record producer or a record company owner, partner person. So I kept going towards things that were creative and were interdisciplinary, that would use writing and design and photography and all of these things. And I had started out at the UW Milwaukee at one of the state schools, and transferred to Marquette because they had a very active radio station and television station that was run by the students, sort of for the students. And so there was a journalism program at the time. I sort of specialized in advertising. Because you're producing things, right, with all of these different skill sets. And now it's all under the umbrella of communications. And
Mm.
so I interfaced a lot with the broadcast communication cohort, and I still know a whole lot of those people to this day. And that network of people sort of leapfrogged each other on our way to places like Los Angeles and New York. And a lot of us are still working professionally in various aspects of communications.
I think very much the path that Cheryl took, certainly the path that I took, was a liberal arts path. So even though I was at a large state institution in Oklahoma, majoring in philosophy it's clearly a central liberal art, and it was a very small program. No, probably no surprise. I ended up majoring or getting my degrees in English from the University of Virginia after that. And then for me, when I was interviewing for jobs after I got my PhD, I visited Oberlin College and I fell in love. I fell in love with the model, and I've spent the last 30 years in liberal arts education at residential liberal arts colleges. And so I do like to point out that I know what I'm talking about when I say that Reed is truly the best liberal arts college in the country.
How does liberal arts really position you, Audrey, if we're thinking about students who are looking at Reed and thinking about careers that are either very specific or very general? What is it that it does for them?
The idea behind the model of education that we offer is that we offer breadth, and so students are able to explore in the humanities and also to think through the sciences and the arts as well. And our hope is that students are guided toward what interests and excites them the most as they find their path. Quite often I meet students who come, I think maybe even the majority of students come to college believing they want to do this one thing because they've seen somebody who does this one job and they think that's the job and this is the thing that you do to get there. And then as they begin their studies and also are able to take advantage of internships and grants and other sort of experiences, then they go toward their interests and they sharpen and focus their interests. And you're able then, as you leave to find your path, to figure things out, to figure out complex situations and to adapt when things change around you or when you need to make changes. For years I've been saying it's not about the major. It's really asking somebody what they're majoring in. At a certain point in your life, you all know this, parents. Nobody asks you what your major was, right? Because you build and create and grow your life. So just thinking about that, it's really what you're able to do at a liberal arts college is explore, and it's very it's individualized in many ways.
Folks are curious about our approach to COVID throughout the pandemic, how we responded to it, our views on remote learning, and if there's any lessons that we're going to take away from this time.
Prior to March of 2020, Reed College had 0 online classes. So the work that our faculty and community did to help the students who were graduating in 2020 get their classes and get through with their work was heroic. As things began in that summer of 2020 to seem like they were going to open back up, even though it was clear we weren't through with this. Something that I heard over and over again as we were making our plans to bring students back to campus, which is what we did, was how can you trust college students to follow safety protocols? How can you trust them to look out for one another? And I and the members of the Reed community who were trying to figure out what came next kept saying, yeah, we think Reedies will do this. We think they will take care of one another. We think they will honor what we need to do to stay safe. And so in addition to doing all the things that had to be done to create a safe environment, whether it was plexiglass or hand sanitizers or tents outside for dining and for classes, we did all of that and de-densified, and then the students were magnificent. And so as we've gone through this last year, we were at full capacity and together throughout the whole year. And it has been, again, a really fine testament to the way that the students in this community takes care of one another. So we have a good story to tell in the sense that what we've been saying at many points during the pandemic is that Reed College is one of the safest places to be,
right,
and maybe in the country.
Well, I think from the twice a week testing to the outside tents to the food delivery service, Reed really did step up to make sure that students were taken care of, and comparatively, just really succeeded in this area.
I wanted to note though too, because you were asking about remote instruction, and while we have learned some things from being able to use these tools, and some of them we'll probably use in different ways as we go forward, more so than we had before. Another prediction that was being made at the onset of the pandemic was that colleges like ours were done. Now everybody would want to do everything online. Nobody would want to be coming to small classes and to be on campuses like ours. What we have discovered, first of all, when the students came back in the fall of 2020, and Milyon, I also like to talk about you and I were walking around campus as the students were arriving, and the joy of the students and their families to be together and to be in person on campus is indescribable. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I will say that people value the in-person experience differently and maybe more now that we've gone through this period of distance and separation.
Cheryl, what is your takeaway? In your opinion, what is this Reed student like? What do they look like out in the world?
Wildly, boldly imaginative and creative. And I love that. Bonkers, just so smart. And I was, everything that Audrey just said, I was just thinking back to talking to some of the students and how grateful they were to be together. And, I come from creativity and interaction, and it's all about relationships and being together and making things that are bigger than yourself. And that just ripples throughout all of the Reed students, and it's so energizing, and I cannot wait until we can just do it. I want to jump in there and get to know everybody, because they're just the Reed student is somebody I want to be friends with, because they're just they're just so interesting.
That's so sweet. That's really nice.
They are definitely interesting, and I can embellish to say that they're, we talk about Reed students as independent thinkers, as being, and they as wanting to explore, as wanting to discover, and it really is an environment of inquiry and adventure, and a real passion for applying oneself to things that are hard and figuring them out and doing that together in a vibrant community.
How do you hope to change Reed during the course of your presidency?
We want to be sure that our students are well supported. Students have faced so many challenges, and we have worries about their mental health and well-being. And so I always think about the ways that we can lift up the campus. I'm excited about something that we have to do, even though it's not something I would have chosen. But during last year, the first year that we were back in the pandemic, we had a snowstorm that ended up collapsing the roofs of our gyms. And so now, as we're rebuilding that, we're thinking very much about opening up spaces, creating more light, creating more of a health and wellness center in this space. And to me, the ways that we can think about lighting up different areas of campus in terms of helping to make sure that there's a balance of joy and focus in the community, that is really important to me.
We have a family who has a question for you, Cheryl. They're curious about your perception on what students have to do to get ready and set up for internships and doing work in their field. And I think, making that connection from being a undergraduate college student to actually trying things out, are there certain things they can do to set themselves up?
I think the most important thing is to be a sponge and be ready to do anything. In my business, the jobs that seem like the flashiest are actually the hardest. When you have the opportunity to be in a professional environment, you can't be so single-minded that you put blinders on and you don't learn things that you might feel are tertiary to your goal. There's a whole world around every business or every job that there are other jobs that you might find is the thing that you're more passionate about. You might want to be a publicist, So anytime you have an opportunity to jump into an internship or work in that kind of an environment, it's really important to keep your spidey senses open to all of the jobs that surround that job. So I would say, the most important thing in getting ready for an internship is to just jump in and just be as aware as possible and ask 8,000 million billion trillion questions.
Students are curious. How do we support students from U.S. Ethnic backgrounds? How do we support communities that identify as LGBTQ? How do we support international students? These intersections of identity are not separate from the college student. They're a student, and they also represent so much makeup of our world. Can you talk about your thoughts on this topic?
In bringing people together, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different experiences, lots of different ways of presenting, it can get complicated. And so I will say that we, in terms of the support that we can provide at the school, we do have really amazing people in student life, and I hope that you get to meet Carnell McConnell Black, who I know is doing some of these programs, and his team are always thinking about what can we do to provide the resources to create community and communities for students in our campus. And then we're also doing work to think about how to ensure that the curriculum is as inclusive as possible. We have a Center for Teaching and Learning that I've been impressed by how many faculty engage with that center to really think about what are they doing in the classroom and how can their practices be even more inclusive.
READ is a place where we have all students from all bands of the economic spectrum. And as many of you have learned, one of our commitments to you when we give you financial aid is that you will be able to do READ. And when we say do READ, that means not only attend READ, but if you need books, if you need to attend a conference, if there are emergent needs, READ is a place that really has your back.
I would say that of all the things that we're always seeking to do at READ, and it can be challenging, is make sure that students can find their way to the resources that they need. Often, if a student is thinking that they might not have everything, they might not exactly know that it's there already, right? Or that something's there for them. You might feel like you're the only one, or you might feel like there aren't things there for you. This is a place where if you look around and start talking, we will help you figure it out.
Can you talk a bit as a professor about how not focusing on the grade re-emphasizes where learning happens?
Well, because my field is English, my mode of grading was comments. Is comments. You wrote a lot of stuff on paper, right? And so to me, the comments were much more important than the grade. And even though I had careful rubrics that said, okay, this is what you got to do for this grade, and the grade becomes important for different things that students actually want in their lives. At READ, that emphasis on the feedback and making sure that the students are centered on learning is something that I know is highly prized. And it is true, and everyone should know that students can ask to see their grades. And it is the case that the grades are not the goal. And so I think, particularly, I feel that as you come out of high school, where you may have been thinking so much about grades for this next step, getting into college, to try to think more about what you want to get out of your learning experience it's one of the things that READ allows you to do differently, I believe.
Is there anything that we can say about the connections that students are making with our faculty and staff on campus that could lead them to understand better about how we really connect with them and guide them throughout these 4 years?
The mentoring relationship at liberal arts colleges is part of the heart of what we do. And so in addition to that, I would note, Milyon, and you know this, members of your team, members of the staff around the campus are also very involved in connections with our students. And so I would just say that it's a feature of what we do, that we seek that interconnectedness and provide that mentorship to students